By now you have seen that there are a number of variables that require your attention when you are going through the process of buying your home. And these variables are dependent on each other, so you want one to go right for the next one to go well. And at the same time, there are certain variables which move in tandem and require your attention at the same time. And given the importance of all these variables, you can't even afford to neglect one of them and pay more attention to some of the other variables that are demanding more attention of yours. So to help you simplify this entire process, we've put the entire thing in a roadmap so that you will know what to expect at what stage of your home buying process and how you should be prepared for the next stage that is coming up. Even when you've gone through the previous sessions, you will have these questions of how much time will it actually take for you to finalize your home purchase, and what is the process that you should do first, and what is it that you should do next, and what is it that you can expect when you go to the market to buy your home. Let's lay out your entire home purchase journey in the form of a map. We've divided this into 3 phases. The first stage is the planning stage, where you're deciding what are the various factors you want in your house and you're arriving at the budget of your house. In the phase 2, which is called the shortlisting phase, is when you're out in the market looking for houses and trying to shortlist the houses which will fit into the various criteria that you've set in the phase 1 of your home purchase planning. And finally, phase 3 is the finalization phase, wherein you actually go ahead and execute the various documents, execute the home loan for the home that you finalized and move into your dream home. Let's start off by understanding the various steps that you would need to go through when you are in the phase 1 or the planning stage of your home purchase. The first step obviously is for you to write down the various features that you're looking for your house. We had discussed this in the introductory session, wherein we talked about whether you want a house which is located in the suburbs of the city or in the heart of the city, whether you want a house with a 2 BHK, a 3 BHK, or you're looking for a villa, whether you want a parking in the house or you do not want parking or you want multiple parkings, what is the floor in which you want your house, what are the various amenities that you want, should it be close to your school or should it be close to your workplace or should it be close to a shopping mall. And then you need to choose on who is the builder that you want to go for, depending on the quality of the builders that you prefer and combined with the various amenities offered by those builders. So when you're in the step 1, you would want to use the tool that we shared in the introductory session so that you are able to shortlist various properties using the tool by dividing all these features into must-have features and optional can have or would like to have features so that your decision making process is made simpler. While you are going through the step 1 of deciding the various features of the house, you would parallelly want to start on the step 2, which is to know your budget, because the budget is going to determine the various features that you can afford, and the locality and the size of the house is going to determine what should be the budget for your home purchase. Since these are interconnected, it will be a good idea to set your budget. We've discussed this already, that you should set a budget such that the amount that is being paid towards the EMI of the home loan that you will take should be a comfortable 40% of your take-home income, so that you're able to manage your cash flows well even after the home purchase is executed and done with. While the 40% benchmark will help you determine the amount of loan that you will be eligible for, you will also have to do a check of how you will be able to fund the balance 20% of the down payment of the house. One very critical and important step while setting your budget is to be very clear about the budget and be very clear about how much you're going to finally spend on the house, because it is not uncommon that you set a budget for 1 CR and then you go around shopping for houses and then land up with a place, finalizing or choosing a place, or rather liking a place which has a total cost of say 1.1 or 1.2 CR. If that happens, it's going to have a major impact on your cash flows. So you want to ensure that when you set a budget, you look for properties which are well within the budget. Even before you start going to the market and start looking for the properties that you've shortlisted based on the budget of step 2 and based on the features of step 1, it is a good idea that you prepare for your contingencies now. Set up an emergency fund, ensure that you have adequate health insurance for you and your family members, check that you have an appropriate life cover, and finally ensure that you set aside enough amount for any other goals that may come up in the near future. It's not uncommon to see that when you go ahead and buy your house, you actually use up all your financial resources for buying that home. But if there is any requirement coming up, whether it is your own marriage 2-3 years down the line or your kids' education in the next 3 years, you do not want to use up all your money for the home and be left with nothing for the other important goals coming up in the next 2 to 3 years. So ensure that you have set aside enough money for any other goals that you have in the near future. Once you are done with the planning phase, then you move on to the phase 2, which is the shortlisting phase. You actually step out, go to the market and start looking for properties which meet the criteria that you set up in step 1 and step 2. You start shortlisting properties, pick out the various features these properties have, how many of them meet the must-have features that you want and others have the other ancillary features which you would like to have. Start shortlisting homes because some homes will have certain features, some homes will fit into your budget, some homes may be offering certain factors which you like to have but you can do away with if the budget does not permit. So there are going to be a lot of discussions around what you like in a house and what you like in an alternative house. A builder may be offering a certain amenity which another builder may not have. A certain house property may be having an offer running where the builder may be ready to bear the GST expense. So there are going to be a lot of tussle here when you're shortlisting your properties. So the good idea here is to list down against each property what are the features that meet your requirement, what are the offers available, so that when you want to finalize it, you are in a much better position to finalize based on the various features and the budgets of these different properties. And while you're shortlisting your houses, you've set a budget for yourself. It is a good idea to approach your bank even before you finalize your property and ask them for a pre-approval of home loan. Now what happens in a pre-approval is, here the banker will pre-approve a certain home loan purely based on your income, that is based on your capacity to service the loan. So although a recommended number of 40% of EMI is a comfortable EMI to have, the banker will be willing to approve an EMI wherein you land up paying 50 to 60% of your take-home income towards the EMI of the loan that you take. So although the banker would be ready to approve such a loan, you know that you want to be financially prudent and stick to a limit of 40% of your take-home income. As it is said, just because a banker is willing to give you a loan, it does not mean that you can afford the loan. So purely based on your income capacity, the bank would be ready to pre-approve a loan. The reason you ask for a pre-approval is that tomorrow when you finalize a certain property, the entire process of sanctioning and then disbursing the loan is much faster, because the banker just needs to do a check on the collateral feature of the property. It should meet the criteria of 80%, wherein the banker will fund only 80% of the value of the property as a loan. And if it meets that criteria, then the process of getting the loan to you would be much faster. So when you apply for a pre-approval, largely the banker is going to look at your capacity to repay based on your take-home income today and also your credit score. If your credit score is good, you can expect a much faster pre-approval of a home loan. When you apply for a pre-approval, you have to submit your KYC documents, you have to submit your income proofs, whether it is salary slips or your business income. Then you'll have to submit your income tax returns and some of the other documents which the banker will ask, so that they can run through the process of pre-approval and give you a pre-approved loan of a certain amount. With the pre-approved loan in place, you have the comfort that yes, a certain amount of loan you can definitely expect from the bank. Although this is not mandatory, this is just an additional step that helps you fasten the entire process. You can always choose to apply for a loan after you finalize the property, but having a pre-approved loan will just give you the comfort when choosing the properties, because you know there is a certain limit that has been pre-approved, and tomorrow when you finalize the property, it will also fasten the process of disbursement of the loan. While you're going through the process of shortlisting of properties, it is extremely important that you get a lawyer to help you with the due diligence. When you shortlist various properties, you may like a certain property. You would be looking at the properties from the point of view as an end user, as somebody who is a consumer. You may be more interested in the various features, you may be looking at the cost of the property, but you should get a lawyer on board who will help you with the legal due diligence, right? The legal due diligence would consist of doing a title search of the property to see that the person who is claiming to be the owner of the property, is he the actual owner or not? He would pull out what is known as the khata certificate from the registrar and do a check to ensure that the property is in the name of the person who is claiming it to be his property. He will check for an encumbrance certificate, which is extremely important, and we've seen a number of frauds happen wherein the property is already placed as a security and a loan has been taken and the same property is sold to you. So you want to check and ensure that there is no encumbrance certificate, there is no loan outstanding against the property, because once you move in, you do not want to have two claims against the property, one of an earlier loan which you are not aware of, and second of the loan that you plan to take from your banker. And even if you finalize the property and don't do your check and your banker finds out that there is an encumbrance on this property, he will not disburse the loan to you, right? So it's extremely important that you get a lawyer to help you with this documentation, with this legal check. The lawyer will also help you check for whether the property has got the completion certificate and the occupancy certificate. Now these are very important because this is technically when you receive the occupancy certificate that the local authorities have checked the property, it is good to move in, they've given the water connection, the electricity connection, the lifts are working, and the property is livable. That is when they issue a occupancy certificate, and that is when you can look to move into the property. Once these basic checks are done and you want to finalize a particular property, the lawyer again will help you draft and get into an agreement to sell, so that also forms the base for the bank to disburse the loan to you when you are buying a property which is ready to move in. And subsequently, when you actually execute the transaction, the lawyer will also help you with the sale deed, which will be the final document which proves your ownership of the property. Although it's very common to see that people go through the entire process without a lawyer's help, they depend on the broker and his assurances, they depend on the seller of the property, and many also depend on the fact that if a banker is ready to give a loan, so the banker has done his due diligence and hence they do not get a lawyer in place. It is advisable that you get a lawyer who is going to work for you, because this is the largest purchase you will ever make in your lifetime. It's always good to be extra safe, it is good to be extra conservative here. Pay a fee to the lawyer and ensure that your paperwork is top notch. As you run through the various properties you've shortlisted, as you find that there are properties which are well within your budget and the bank is ready to sanction a loan to you in the form of the pre-approved loan that they've given you, once you get a clear through from your lawyer saying that the properties are good to go ahead from a purchase point of view because the paperwork is good, there is no encumbrance on those properties, that is when you would want to sit down and finalize the property that you want to purchase. And when you finalize the property that you want to purchase, that is when you move into the phase 3 of your home buying process, which is the finalization phase. Once everybody in your family who are involved in the home buying process agree to a certain property, the way you would finalize the property is to get in touch with the seller of the property and pay him a token money. A token money is like a booking amount, wherein by paying that amount to him, you are confirming to the seller that I will purchase the property from you at a certain price. Now, when the token money is given, it is generally accompanied with what is known as an agreement to sell. An agreement to sell is basically a promise between the buyer and the seller that the seller would sell the property to the buyer, wherein he lists down what exactly the property he is willing to sell, and the buyer gives a promise that he will buy the property for the price that has been fixed between the buyer and seller. So it's basically an agreement to sell. The actual sale agreement will follow after this. Once you enter into an agreement to sell and you've paid the token money, that is when you are a step closer to buying your house, and it is based on this agreement to sell that the banker will disburse the home loan before the final registration of the property takes place. And generally it is mentioned as a part of the agreement that after the token money is given, if for some reason the seller of the property decides to back out, what is the penalty he needs to pay? And if the buyer of the property decides to back out, then what is the penalty he has to incur, right? Because once you have entered into an agreement to sell, the seller of the property is not going to go around looking for other buyers, and he is assuming that you are going to purchase the house. And if either of the parties decide to back out, there is going to be a penalty clause which is generally equal to the amount of the token given. So if the buyer decides to back out, he loses the token he's paid to the seller, and if the seller decides to back out, he will have to return the token or an amount equal to 2 times the token, which includes the penalty amount as well. Although there is no standard or a norm for this, you should ensure that the penalty amount is drafted into the agreement to sell so that there are no issues tomorrow with any of the parties backing out, and your lawyer will be able to help draft these terms and conditions into the agreement to sell. Once you've signed off the agreement to sell, the next step is to make the down payment of the property. So we have discussed that generally when you buy a property for a certain amount, you are expected to fund at least 20% of the property, which is known as the down payment, and the balance 80% would be funded by the bank. Now, it is not necessary that you go to the bank and ask for a loan equal to 80% of the property. You can always decide to fund 25, 30, 40% of the property and take a loan for a smaller amount. But that said and done, it is at this stage that you will have to make the down payment of the property to the seller of the home. Once you've made the down payment, you will also go ahead and make the payment for the stamp duty and the registration. So that is where your broker would help you arrive at what is the amount of stamp duty to be paid, what is the amount of registration charges to be paid. Those can be deposited at the local real estate office, and you will get a challan, which is a confirmation of having paid both the stamp duty as well as the registration. It is only when you've made the payment of the stamp duty and registration and you've made the down payment of the house, after these steps are completed, that is when the banker will disburse the home loan amount directly to the account of the seller. Now this is the scenario when you purchase a house which is fully constructed and ready to move in. When you purchase a property which is under construction, then what happens is the home loan is disbursed by the banker in phases, which is linked to the construction of the property, and all of the disbursement of the home loan happens purely based on the agreement to sell between you and the seller of the property, who in most cases would be the builder. So in case of a fully constructed property, the entire home loan is disbursed at one go to the seller of the property, whereas in case of a property under construction, the home loan is disbursed in phases depending on the stage of construction of the house. When you're at the stage of having finalized the property and paid the token amount, that is when you would want to approach the banker parallelly to process your home loan. While you arrange for the down payment and the amount to be paid for the stamp duty and registration, at the same time you want your application to reach the bank so that the banker can process your application, because now is the stage when you finalize the property, the banker has everything that he needs and he can give a approval for disbursal of the home loan. The home loan application process starts with applying for the home loan, paying the processing fee payable to the bank. Once you do that, the banker would scrutinize your application, verify the various documents, evaluate your capacity to repay in terms of what is the EMI that you can afford based on your income, and based on your capacity and the fact that you have a good credit score, they will give you a home loan offer letter. The home loan offer letter basically is an offer to extend a certain amount of a loan to you subject to verifying the property documents. If you had actually applied for a pre-approval of a home loan when you were going through the phase of shortlisting various properties, this entire process till getting a home loan offer letter would already have been completed. When you decide to buy a property, apart from looking at the amount you are paying to the seller of the property, the banker would do an independent verification of the value of the property, and if their value is different from the value you are paying, they would disburse a loan based on their internal valuation of the property. So once the property verification is done and the bank is satisfied that you have the capacity to repay and service a loan with a certain EMI, and the collateral is good to keep against the loan that the bank is going to extend to you, that is when the bank would go to the final step of actually disbursing the home loan to you. Right? So that is why we talked about having a pre-approval in place, so that you just have to worry about the last two steps when you finalize the property. Once the bank is ready to disburse the loan, or rather has disbursed the loan to the seller of the property, that's when you move to the final stage of your process of executing the sale deed. In this step of executing the sale deed, you and the seller of the property would have to visit the real estate authorities' local office. You need to sign off the fact that the seller is selling the property and the buyer has paid for it in the form of various payments. They're all listed as a part of the agreement. And when you finish signing of the sale deed, that is when technically the house is yours, legally the house is yours, and you can be the proud owner of your new home. To summarize the learnings from this session, it is always advisable to spend a lot of time in the planning phase so that you are very clear of the features that you want and you're very clear of your budget, so that when you actually start going and looking for houses, you can pick those houses that meet your criteria. If you go to the market without planning yourself well, you can find yourself lost in a sea of options and unable to decide on which house do you want to pick. In addition to planning extremely well for your home purchase, it is always good to have two partners by your side. One is the lawyer who will help you with the legal due diligence, and also a financial advisor who will help you with the finances of buying the house, in terms of he can assist you with setting the budget for the house, also help you with the home loan process, and eventually help you move into your new house once all the payments are made to the seller of the property. To the extent possible, avoid making any payments in cash, because when you make payments via check or bank, you leave a paper trail and you will not have any issues whatsoever if certain things do not go as well as planned in the entire process. Finally, no two persons are going to experience the same process when they go ahead and want to buy their homes. It's always going to be different because there are so many variables. Some variables may not go as per your expectations. Some variables may change or are out of your control because they are determined by the third parties involved in the entire process. And the budgets, the constraints, the process of home loan, acceptance, disbursal, there are a million things that can happen when you are actually going through the process of buying the house. But if you are planned well enough, you are very clear of what you want, you've set aside enough money for contingencies, you've got your pre-approval in place from your banker. With these elements, you would be more confident in going ahead with the process, and with proper legal advice, you can be assured that tomorrow you don't have to worry about one of the filmy scenarios taking place with you, wherein somebody else comes and claims the house to be yours, or the banker refuses to give you the loan because there's a certain paperwork which wasn't right in the house that you finalized. In the next session, we will talk about what you can expect after you've purchased the house. We will talk about how do you consider prepaying your home loan, and also if you have to change your home loan vendor, how you can go about doing it.